So today we're going to review how to do Korean Som, or the 4-point needle technique. There are a few questions in the boards, maybe maybe 2 or 3 or so, I believe. But most importantly, I believe when it comes to, getting your degree and your classes, professors or instructors may emphasize that you guys are familiar with this concept, and how they will maybe be on exams. So decided to just make this quick video for that purpose. So first and foremost, most important thing is you need to know two concepts. One, it's a generating cycle of the 5 elements, and the other one is the control cycle. You guys should be familiar what this is, but generating cycle, I'm going to just do it very quickly. Huo, which is fire, and it goes for that, and then goes for earth. And then metal, Jin, Shui, and then Mu. So these are the placements. They all go clockwise. That's how they generate. Now, when it comes to the control cycle, it's every other element, right? So, for example, let's use this as an example. We have kidney, which is a water organ. Every other element, as I said, so the controller of the water element is earth, right? So then you do that for every other element clockwise as you go around. So once you got that concept in your head, we're going to now go over what happens when there's a patient who shows excess conditions and patients who show deficient conditions, and you happen to use the 5-element method. So here is how we would do it. So in order to figure out the 4-point, that is called 4-point needle method sometimes Korean Som, you have to figure out the elemental players, okay? And then you have to figure out what rules I have to fulfill in order to find these 4 points. You can think of it that way. So in order to figure out what elements are in play, first of all, we're going to look at what are we dealing with. So we're dealing with a excess condition of the kidney. So that's water. So we have one player here, shui. Now it says there's 2 rules. Number 1, sedate the sun. Sun is usually the receiver end. So who receives from shui, or water? It's mu, which is wood. So we know that the second player is wood. Or another way I usually say it, it's 1 element forward. So whatever this element is, which is in this case water, the next element forward is mu. I put the horary in brackets. I'll explain why later. So that's so that we know that the second player. The third player. How do we know what the third player is? The second rule is to tonify the grandmother. In other words, it's actually the controller. So what do we mean by the grandmother? So if mu is at the receiving end and shui is the giver, then who's going to control the mother? The grandmother. So that's why it's the controller. So what's the controller of shui? In this case is tu, which is earth. So we know the 3 elemental players: earth, wood, and water. Now how do we pick out the points? So in order to suffice the first rule, sedating the sun, we need to find the horary point of the player in this case, which is wood. So that's why we have wood right here. Knowing that we're dealing with an excess condition, however, for a yin organ, we have to use yin organs for the earth and the wood. What's the yin organ for the wood? It's the liver. So what do? We find a wood point on this wood channel, so which actually means the horary point. So the horary point for the wood yin organ is the liver 1. In order to still suffice this rule, sedate the sun. Now we have to find the wood point on the water channel, which would be in this case the kidney, that this is what we're dealing with. Then it would be what? Kidney 1. So I put a little minus sign here. This means to sedate it. So this is the sedating. This is the rule number 1 that's being sufficed. Rule number 2 that's being sufficed here. We know that to tonify the grandmother, it means to tonify using the earth element, which in this case is the spleen because it's a yin organ. The earth point on the earth channel is spleen 3. This is the horary point also. So these 2 points right here, you just have to memorize the horary point. So the only thing you have to remember is it a yin or a yang organ we're utilizing? That's number 1. Number 2, what are the elements that are the players that we are dealing with? Once you know what element players are dealing with, you just have to put the horary point. That's simple for these 2. Now, but back to tonifying the grandmother. So we know that the earth is the controller in this case, that would be the earth point on the water channel. That would be kidney 3. Finding this, you'll suffice it with the second rule right here. This, if some people are confused on, who's the controller of a certain element, you can always place yourself back 2 elements. So shui is here, right? And then you have jin, that's 1. And then 2, backwards, that's 2. So 1, 2. If you get confused, this is what you do. You figure out ways to remember things on your own terms. So this is how you would find the 4 points here. Now, for a deficient condition, I chose here, for example, stomach, and it's a yang organ. So the first rule we have is tonify the mother. The mother is going to be the element that provides, nurtures, and gives. So you have to go back 1 element. So we have earth. 1 element back is what? Fire. So that's how you know this is the player. You sedate the grandmother, or in other words, the controller, or 2 elements back. So you have 2, right? 2 elements back. That's huo, and then that's mu. So that's wood. And that's how you know. So you have 3 players of elements: earth, fire, and wood. Now what do? In this case, you tonify the fire. In this case, you sedate the wood. We're using yang organ because we're talking about a yang conditioned organ right here, stomach. So we know that there's 2 fire yang organs, SI and Sanjiao. So the horary point, SI5 or Sanjiao 6 would be it for here. And then we didn't finish it. We have to tonify the mother, right? So the fire, so you have to look for the fire point on the earth channel or on the stomach channel. That would be stomach 41. And that suffices the first rule right here. Now, so to suffice the second rule, we have to sedate the grandmother, which is wood. And it's going to be a yang organ of the wood, which is gallbladder 41, or the horary point is gallbladder 41. Now you'll find the wood point on the earth channel, in this case the stomach, and that'll be stomach 43. And you'll remember that for the wood, at least in here, you have to sedate it, and here you have to tonify it. This is why these markers are here. Same thing for right here as well. And then you have your 4 points. Now next, we're going to use sometimes a circadian rhythm or a circadian clock in order to sedate or tonify an organ. So in this case, we're going to tonify the organ. This can mean that the organ is weak, so you want to tonify it. In this example, we have the lungs, which is at 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Now, what is this 3 a.m. to 5 a.m.? Everybody should know this circadian rhythm. It starts from the lung, as we know, right? 3 a.m., 5 a.m. And in every 2 increments, we go in a cycle for 24 hours. And it's in 2-hour increments. So you should know this cycle. I'm not going to write it out here, but it's 2-hour increments, and it goes in the order of the channels. And it ends right at the lungs. So the last one is usually going to be liver from 1 to 3. So anywho, when you want to tonify the organ, we understand the organ's time is when it's at its peak level. So the lungs organ time that we're given is that it's going to be it's going to be 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. So if you want to tonify the organ, what do? You needle at the organ's time when it's at its peak. Now for sedating the organ, this probably means that the organ is in excess, most likely. So that's why you would sedate the organ. How do you sedate the organ? I think of it as splitting to carry it on to the next channel, to the paired channel. That's how I see it. And the reason I say that is because if it was the lungs that we're dealing with trying to sedate, which is 3 a.m., 5 a.m., we would actually utilize the paired organ, which is LI. As we know, lung and large intestine are both metal elements. They are the paired organs. So utilize the paired organ time to sedate the lung organ, which is from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Now, besides these 2 primary ways of, tonifying the organ or sedating the organ, both of these can also use a secondary method, which is to use the opposite time. So in this case, if you want to tonify the lungs or sedate the lungs, either or, you would use the opposite time, which is from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., which is at the urinary bladder time. And they'll ask, why does it work? It's because it's trying to balance the yin and yang balance. That's what it's trying to do. Because at the end of the day, TCM is all about balancing, harmonizing the body internally. So this would actually make sense. I hope that was helpful. This is it for the Korean Psalm and the circadian rhythm needling method. Thank you.